This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Flowify. Flowify is far and away the best piece of mortgage technology that I have used. I was one of the first users back in 2013, and it was a game changer when it came to upgrading my client experience. At its core, Flowify is the simplest way to streamline the document collection process with your borrowers. The user interface is simple to use and intuitive, which is great for client interaction and experience. If your borrower can browse and upload an email, then they can use Flowify. It creates buckets of what is needed, what is pending, and what we have, so you can avoid all of the back and forth and the "I already sent you that 5 times" conversations. It automates reminders. It's cloud-based, so you don't have to download a big piece of software that slows your computer down. You can access it anywhere you can get online, or even through the Flowify app on your smartphone. The milestone updates provide a simple one-stop communication portal with all parties in the transaction, including buyer's agents, listing agents, escrow or attorney contacts, and transaction coordinators. We've seen it cut down on status calls into our team from realtors and borrowers by about 80 to 90%. There's so much that Flowify does, it's actually hard to keep up. Just recently, they've updated their 1003 loan application to an interview-style loan app instead of just a fill-in form web form. I just did the demo, and it is awesome. I really am excited to get started on it. It's the perfect complement to your CRM and your LOS. If you're like me and your company uses Encompass, it communicates seamlessly with Encompass to avoid a bunch of the double entry work. There's embedded DocuSign within the system. There's account check so you can link to your client's bank records so you don't need to get statements. It goes on and on. So get more efficient. Your processors will thank you. Your underwriters will thank you. Your bank account will thank you. Sign up today and get 25% off your first 4 months by going to flowify.com/sauce. That's FLOIFY.com/SOSS.
What marketing are you doing? What events are you hosting? How do you follow up with your clients? What do you do to create that 10 experience after the client leaves you that you can show statistically how you generate more referrals for your agents and what it's like working with you?
You are listening to the Loan Officer Strategy Session podcast, where top producers answer your mortgage origination questions. To get your questions answered, check out our Facebook group, Loan Officer Strategy Sessions, or submit direct to the website for upcoming episodes at lostrategysessions.com. Now here's your host, Andrew Sauce.
Welcome to Loan Officer Strategy Sessions. I am your host, Andrew Sauce. Today on the show, we have Sean Zalmanoff with Next Level Coaching, also a regional manager with USA Mortgage, non-producing branch manager. Sean has been in the industry for about 16, 17 years, and I was actually on their podcast. He hosts a podcast with one of his fellow co-founders of Next Level Coaching, and had a great conversation with them. At that time, thought I would have Sean on to have a discussion about how he sees the industry at this point and what he's talking about with his coaching clients and with his employees around moving into a potentially declining market and how to get your mind set in shape for dealing, and not just dealing, but also thriving and succeeding in a declining market. And so we spoke a lot about opportunities when other people's mindsets are jumbled up with negativity, how you can reframe the conversation and really excel in this market. We also talked a lot about how you can structure your business so that it solves for what you want out of life, not just out of your business. So we talked a lot about sort of having some self-awareness around really how you want to structure. And we also spoke about sort of the future of the industry and if we think that realtors are still the number one source of business for a loan officer. And so that's thought it was a really great conversation, and I think that you'll learn a lot out of it. So without any further rambling on my part, please welcome to the show, Sean Zalmanoff. Okay, we're here with Sean Zalmanoff with USA Mortgage, regional manager, as well as founder of Next Level Coaching, a mortgage coaching company. Sean, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Andrew, thanks for having me today.
You got it. I was on your podcast a couple months ago. I think it just dropped maybe early September, and had a great time talking to you guys, and thought I would have you on the show because I feel like you guys can add a lot of value to my audience as well.
Appreciate that. We are here to add value, and we'll do that today.
Awesome. So you're out of the St. Louis area.
Yes.
And you've been in the mortgage industry for how long? How'd you get into all this craziness?
I have been in the mortgage industry since 2002. right at the beginning of 2002 is when I joined. I graduated college in December of '00. I was on pace to graduate in 4 years and was having so much fun that I realized I could easily extend it an extra semester. And so I did. Then all my friends that happened to have, real jobs at the time kept coming back to college. I was managing a restaurant and bar and bartending many nights a week and just having a great time. And they all came back and said, the real world sucks. Stay at this place as long as you can.
Yeah.
At one point, I kind of had this mental goal to get up to 100 interviews for a real job, but I ended up interviewing for about 70 jobs. And the craziest thing happened. So 9/11, was impactful for the entire world, but instantly just seeing how it trickled down to every facet of business. We were really busy one week. We actually, we closed for a day after that happened and came back just to, serve food, be there for the community. We realized we needed to stay open. And then all of the young individuals who were coming in and spending a bunch of money at the bar, it evaporated, like literally overnight. And so as the stock market started to crash, all of the people, all of these children's, kids, young adults, parents who were spending money, and the parents were like, you can't go spend money anymore. And so I was like, man, well, I guess I got to go get a real job. And there was a guy who came in the bar all the time, fairly often, and he owned a mortgage business. And since I was like a sophomore or junior in college, he was like, man, you got to come work with me. You got to come work with me. You'd crush it. You'd do this. Even in those late 90s, rates were dropping. There was like no regulation at that time. And he was like, it doesn't matter that, you're 19 years old. You will do good. And so finally he came in shortly afterwards and was like, hey man, I think I'm actually ready. And, he was giving me grandiose ideas of I could make 6 figures my first year and how easy everything was. But I wasn't going to live I went to Mizzou. I wasn't going to live in Columbia, Missouri and do this. And so we happened to have an office in the suburbs of St. Louis. And so I went and took a job in the mortgage business. I still stayed through the end of the year, and like January 2nd, January 3rd of 2002 was my first day as a mortgage loan officer in this career that I guess chose me.
Seems like a common story. It's funny, like the number of people that I've interviewed that started in that like 2001 to 2003 timeframe is crazy. I did too. Trying to figure out what that is. Maybe it's just the age of people that I'm interviewing are kind of my similar age. But yeah, there's a lot of people that got into it that are still doing well in that time frame. And it's an interesting, 15, 16 years, right?
16 now, yeah.
16, yeah. We've seen basically 2 booms and 1 bust and maybe 1 coming up, right? So we're kind of in our second full cycle going through that. So what do you feel like is going to be different for you going through, let's say the next 2-3 years of all the projections are that the market is going to shrink over the next couple of years. We don't know if that's 100% true, but let's just say that is something similar to late 07 to mid 09 or 10, depending on where your market is, sort of a similar market of contracting and a little bit more difficult. And at that point, additional regulations coming through. I don't know that we're going to see that this time, but what do you feel like is maybe different? Are you positioned better this time than you were at that point? You're a lot earlier in your career.
A lot earlier. Yeah, that's for sure. So, man, Andrew, it's funny because I hear loan officer after loan officer talking about, man, business is going to slow down. And you know what? Q4 of 2018, there's going to be less business than there was in Q4 of 2017. So you have 2 options at this point. And one of the things that we tell all of our coaching clients, and I am a firm believer, it's one of the principles of my life, is the story you believe the most is the story you tell yourself the most, and the story you tell yourself the most is the story that you believe the most. So there's going to be less business. But I don't want to toot my own horn too much, but I am really awesome at what I do. My ops staff out there.
That wasn't too much.
Too much, okay.
I'm just really great. One of the great things about me is how humble I am.
Yeah, and I'm really humble. But like, if I tell myself I'm mediocre,
like one of the most humble people you'll ever meet.
If I tell myself I'm mediocre all the time, well, man, that's what I'm going to get. If I tell myself I'm great all the time, that's what I'm going to get too. Like my op staff is amazing. I have fantastic loan officers, loan partners. We have a great business. Man, this is a good time to pick up market share while other loan officers are telling themselves that story. You know, if you're a branch manager, regional manager who is recruiting loan officers in branches, I think this is going to be one of the best times in the history of the mortgage industry to bring new people onto your team. You got companies all across the country, big and small, merging, closing, laying off people. The talent acquisition that we're going to be able to grab is just going to be fantastic. It has to be, maybe 1 in 30 or 40 people in the industry is an A player. And even in a time of contraction, man, if I find an A player, it's hard not to find a spot for them.
Yeah.
So not only are we positioned with the attitude that we have, the way that our business is structured to go out and get more business, but you know what? I don't care that there's going to be less loans. And again, because we are pretty darn good at what we do, like I don't need all the loans. I just need my portion of them. So while every loan officer's out there meeting with agents being like, man, it's bad out there. Oh yeah, it's bad out there. Should we meet for coffee again in 2 weeks and console our miseries of how bad it is out there? And they're meeting with me and they're meeting with my team. And we're being like, yeah, man, business is actually growing for us right now.
Yeah.
What are you doing? How's business growing? What are you doing? Well, here's what we are, man. Life's awesome. And I don't need the whole pie. I just need my piece of the pie.
Yeah.
Like those people want to do business with people who make them feel good and good about the market. And that's just the kind of attitude that you have to have in this business, because otherwise, man, it'll spit you up and your mind will kill you with the negative thoughts that run through it of, oh no, the sky is falling. Oh no, the sky. I mean, we've been hearing the sky's falling since we started in the business.
I know. Yeah. When email came out, it was the death of the mortgage person, right? I think that's really, really great advice, especially in this time. It's so easy to get caught up in commiserating with what used to be versus what is currently in terms of the state of the market. And like, listen, the market's the market. You can't control. The number of loans that are going to be done in the market is out of your control. So why put any focus on that? All you need to focus on is getting as many of those as you can and doing a great job for the people that you are serving. So a couple of things I want to dive into that. You talked about when you're in a position as like a branch manager, a regional manager, somebody who's in recruiting, and even for the individual loan officer, this is a similar concept when you're going after additional agents. In times of uncertainty, in times of upheaval, in times when people's pipelines are down, that's the best time to gain market share. It's the time that the good companies, the good originators have kind of been waiting for. It's really hard to recruit somebody when they have a $25 million pipeline that they're sitting on, right? They're just not in that mindset of even looking at opportunities. But once they've gone through that and things are a little bit more stable, they maybe can see some opportunities for differences. Do you watch Game of Thrones?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure most people watch it, but if you don't,
the new book would come out already. But
there's a character named Littlefinger, and one of the earlier seasons, he said something. He was talking to one of the other characters, and he's always conniving and kind of behind the scenes, trying to pull the strings, kind of the puppet master. One of the guys said, "Well, you're going to throw the realm into chaos," and he said, "Chaos is a ladder." So I feel like we're in that chaos standpoint right now, where like when there's a lot of upheaval, there's a lot of opportunity to capture market share. So I definitely think that mindset is a huge game changer when it comes to putting yourself in position to see this market as an opportunity instead of as a curse. So this market is happening for you, not to you. And having that mindset and staying positive around things is super important. I'm somebody who's, in general, overly optimistic. And even I found myself in like early September, mid-September, getting a little bit like, man, what's going on? Like for me, anytime the market slows down, by the time I notice that it slowed down, it picks back up again. That's traditionally what has happened with me. And we went probably 4 weeks in a row with really minimal, for our standards, kind of minimal origination. I'm like, okay, what is going on? This is feels a little bit different. And you feel it starting to creep into your mindset and creep into your decision making. And so I had to like kind of really snap myself out of that to understand that this is good. Like this is something that happens in the market, and you have to look at these times as opportunities. Sometimes you're reaping, sometimes you're sowing, sometimes you're planting, sometimes you're harvesting, whatever your metaphor analogy is. you have to really see this as an opportunity to pick up market share, both from a lending standpoint, from a realtor standpoint, and also from a recruiting standpoint, whatever your job is.
We're all recruiting. It doesn't matter if we're recruiting a loan officer, a branch, or a realtor, or even recruiting Tom and Linda down the street to buy a house from you. We're always recruiting somebody. The analogy that you gave of climbing that ladder. So I've been meditating pretty regularly for a couple of years now, and there's a lot of imagery that is used inside of meditating.
Yeah.
And it made me think of one of the toughest things when you start is clearing thoughts. Like you sit down and try to have your head clear, and your mind's like more active than it is at any other point in your day. You're like, man, I'm just trying to relax. And so one of the things that they talk about early on in there, and I mean, if anybody's looking for a great app, Headspace is a killer app.
Yeah, I can second that one.
And one of the things they tell you inside of there is like, so imagine all of those thoughts running through your head are like clouds. There's always blue sky above it. So you just have to reach up to that blue sky because it's there. And, there's a lot of agents out there. Imagine there's probably more loan officers than anybody that are going to listen to this podcast. Man, there's more agents out there than you want to meet with. There's agents that 4 months ago wouldn't give anybody the time of day because they're so busy. So go find out what your value proposition is. And if you can't figure out what your value proposition is, I'm just going to tell you to hang up your cleats right now and go find a different job. Because if you don't know what you're delivering to the marketplace, how are you going to go create relationships and explain that to other people? So figure that out and then go form relationships based upon that and go deep on those relationships. You call 800 realtors every week. You need to call a few realtors. Maybe you do it first. Maybe you need to call 30 or 40 realtors a week for a while to get appointments, to set them up. But find those relationships, figure out a pattern of follow-up to go deep with those relationships, and not a pattern that says you call them every single week with the same script. Find something different than everybody else is doing. Create a formula for yourself, and you will gain relationships. It's not hard. I mean, it's the middle of October right now. There is no loan officer who, if they follow a simple formula, could not add 6 new referral partners to their business before December 31st of this year.
I firmly believe that. Did you happen to go to the Todd Duncan seminar last week?
No. I saw quite a few people post on it. It sounded like it was another good event.
Yeah, always a good event. And, I always pick up a few things, and I'm like addicted to metaphors and analogies. So probably see that talking to me. But one of the things when you were talking, Todd was talking, and I interviewed him as well for the podcast, and he talked about this on my show too. But when he first started out, this is early 80s, excuse me. This is when the rates were super high and there was a recession going on. And he would go out to all these offices and he wore this big green button on his suit, like a goofy big green button that says, "Rumor has it we're in a recession. I'm choosing not to participate," which obviously just a total mindset shift for anybody who he's coming into interaction with, because that's probably all anybody's talking about at that time in our community. So, I think that just choosing not to participate in wallowing, so easy to get caught up in that. So easy to, I think the reason people like to do that is it sort of takes out all of their BS. It allows them to keep telling themselves that story that if the market is screwed up, then, well, there's nothing I can do about it. I'm not supposed to be successful right now. I think if you kind of take out that excuse, then what's left? What's left is their effort and what they're doing and what their mindset is. So, yeah, it's such a huge thing. I'm glad that
it's not my fault. It's not my fault.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, like, everybody's participating in the same market. Everybody's having to deal with whatever the market is. So I do think that it really will reveal, as this tide goes out, it'll reveal who's not wearing bathing suits, So it's easy in a good market. It's really easy for everybody to be successful because there's so many loans.
And if you're a purchase guy out there, which, until from 2002 until a year ago, you could have survived on just being a refi guy. But if you're a purchase man or woman in the industry trying to dominate your market, man, this is the dream that you've been waiting for. Like, all of these refi shops, all of these loan officers, many of which give our industry a negative name, they're going to be gone. Few of them are going to be able to make the transition from refi kings to the purchase market. We have the relationships. We have the value. The realtors know us already. So you just have to go make more of them know you, and you're going to win. It reminds me, you're talking about stories and analogies and everything. There's two things that you just made me think of, Andrew. One, there's a quote that I live by, and I own a few rental properties as well too, and I see this with tenants. And the quote is, life gets better when you get better. And man, I see two types of tenants in the world. I got tenants that the light bulb goes out, the smoke detector needs the battery done. They just change the stuff. They just fix the things that they need to do. And I got another set of tenants, that the man's always keeping them down. Something's going on. It's not my fault. It's not this. Something happened. Mm-hmm. And that is just, that's a story that they believe to choose. And so like when we're saying, oh, the market's less, it's not my fault that business is down. Man, it is. If you have 100% of something out there in the world, and there's a 2% impact that you can have to affect change in that market, then you had a 2% chance to affect your outcome differently. And if you do that over and over again, you're going to have a different success and a different story. The story, though, that I was thinking about, it was, you ever heard the story about the guy who sold hot dogs in New York?
No.
I believe it goes that, there is an immigrant who moved to New York and, man, ends up being like the best hot dog vendor in New York. He only buys fresh buns every day, throws them out at the end of the day, has the best product, has a line at his hot dog stand every day. And so his son, they save up money. They send this kid to college. Kid comes back. He's like, man, Dad, I learned about marketing. I learned about this. Man, the economy's bad out there right now. You have to do things to cut costs. And so, man, you're throwing your hot dog buns away at the end of every day. He's like, I have the freshest hot dog buns. Everybody knows like that. I have the best hot dogs. And so his son finally convinces him to, you need to save it. So he starts saving them for one day, then he starts saving them for 2 days. And then all of a sudden business goes down, and goes to his son. He's like, man, you're right. The market is bad out there. I'm starting to feel it myself too. He chose to believe somebody else's story instead of doing what made him successful.
Yeah. So as you have students, coaching clients who are falling into this trap of a negative mindset, what would you tell them? If you don't have some of this, like maybe historical context, A, and B, maybe some of the previous training that maybe you and I have done, like in terms of like some of the internal work on yourself and mindset, and some tools that you can draw on, how do you approach that when you're speaking with a client around changing their mindset and getting a little bit more positive? What are some approaches that you can take when you see somebody falling into that trap?
So one of the things that we do inside of the coaching platform, and that I just do personally, it wasn't anything that I invented. Many CEOs and very successful people across the world do this, is we live in seasons. And so, man, I live in a 90-day season. So sometimes in those 90-day seasons, man, it's a grind. I got to work 50 plus hours a week. Mm-hmm. And sometimes those seasons are smooth sailing where, man, I'm working 30, 35 hours a week. Business is good. Everything's dialed in and just enjoying life. Yeah. So first of all, you have to identify what season that you're in. Then, we work on goals every single week. So first of all, inside of your season, you've got a 90-day goal that you're going to hit. 90-day outcome. It's not a goal. It's what you're planning for. And we break those down into 60 and 30-day benchmarks. From there, every week, you're creating an action plan, 4, 5, 6 things to move you closer to that benchmark every single week, and then to that outcome at the end of those 90 days. So it's structured, and you have to have a plan in place. It's so easy to go into work on Monday, leave on Friday, work 40 hours, and be super busy the whole time, but have done nothing to move your business forward in a powerful manner. And
really easy to do that, actually, like especially in this, at least the perception of what this kind of market is in a market that's slowing down. Really easy to create yourself to be busy. Busy doing what?
Yeah, busy on Facebook, busy with fantasy football stuff, busy not doing anything related to work. And, we just call that surface confusion. It's all the distractions that you have in place.
Or even work-specific stuff, like just hopping into existing files because it makes you feel good, like, oh, okay, I'm working.
Yeah.
Instead of making the phone calls or making some additional connections, doing some of the things that are required of you as the rainmaker and as a salesperson to do. You're never working on this month's paycheck. You're always working on 3, 4, 5 months from now's paycheck.
You pop it into those existing files that your processor and loan partner out there already have covered because they're slow too.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you have to remember too. They're slow. They can handle more. This is the time you should be out more out of the files.
Yeah.
Rather than less. Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You were just hitting it right on the head there.
Yeah. So when it comes to, you talked about approaching, well, I want to talk about a couple of things. I want to talk about, is approaching real estate agents still the number one plan? We'll get to that in a second. But as you are, assuming that is still the primary source of business, which I've got opinions on, what are some ways that, let's talk about like a loan officer who's in their middle stage of their career, kind of a jack of all trades. They specialize in everything, so which means they specialize in nothing. I think very common for somebody to say like, hey, we do FHA conventional, whether it's purchase or refi or first time, second time, move up buyers, like HELOC, everything, right? I think it's more important to go out to new agents without this sort of surface level general jack of all trades, master of none, and more to have a real specialty. Like I specialize in, and not I specialize in customer service. Yeah, you and everyone else. I think that's a minimum level at this point of, having really solid communication and customer service and all that. That's entry level. That's not setting you apart anymore. I think that it's more important than ever to really specialize in something, whether it's a product or a demographic or a geographic area. What are your thoughts on getting more narrow when it comes to your specialties as almost like a Trojan horse to get into the relationship? Like, hey, I am the condo guy, whatever. Like I'm an expert in non-QM loans as a Trojan horse to get into that relationship to then get all of their other business.
Man, that's actually specializing to a degree. FHA, VA, USDA, conventional loans, like they're not that hard. I mean, when LOs start to try to go, I do HELOCs and I do commercial loans and I can do your land loans and do all those other things. That's really where I think that it gets to be too big.
Too diluted.
We're on one of my loan officers who came to work with me 3.5 years ago. She was the bond queen. And she was like, this is how I'm going to get business. I'm going to go in, I'm going to do their bond loans, and then they're going to give me their other business. Told her from day one, be careful what you ask for, sister. And about 6 months later, she was like, okay, you're right. What do I need to do to change my business? Because also, when you just continue to ask for the same thing, I don't want to be pigeonholed into that person. I joined USA Mortgage 9 years ago. And when I came here, we had, well, first of all, refis were king. But also, man, we were really awesome at doing 203K loans. And so if you have a product that the market is bringing where there's a lot of foreclosures and you can really create value for that, then I think you can create value for your realtors doing that. But what other things do you do? Not that I think funnels are a good use of time, but do you have them created? Can you provide leads to agents? What marketing are you doing? What events are you hosting? How do you follow up with your clients? What do you do to create that 10 experience after the client leaves you that you can show statistically how you generate more referrals for your agents and what it's like working with you? That's what I'm focused on presenting. That's what I want to deliver to them, to be like, this is how I'm different. Yeah, of course we're great. Of course our rates are good. Of course we close on time. 10 years ago, that got you in the door.
Yeah.
2011, 2012, you would get relationships by saying that.
You would get relationships just by doing milestone updates. It's insane. Yeah. Now, I think people have figured some of that stuff out. I think most people have figured that out. So it's not really setting you apart anymore. Even closing fast. That was always my big claim to fame, was that we can close super quick. And now that's, in my market anyway, that's becoming almost standard. A 21-day close is okay, you and everyone else can do that. Now we're it's almost like 8-minute abs, right? I can do 7.5-minute abs. We're going to close them. So.
Well, with day one certainty, not needing pay stubs, not needing, bank accounts from people, that is just going to continue.
And having the capacity to pre-underwrite and all that stuff. Yeah. So I think that getting more specialized, I think that people, the first thing they think of is product specialization. I don't necessarily think you need to do that unless it's something you're just really good at and you love. Like I've got I refer somebody all of my construction loans. We're licensed to do them. We have some access to do them, but in my market, the access that we have for construction loans is all conforming loan limit, which goes up to 680,000, which in your market would build a big house, but in my market doesn't build a condo.
Doesn't buy the land, right?
Right. Yeah. So jumbo construction loans are something that I get requests for periodically, but that I just don't go out and source. So I refer them to a loan officer at a bank. That's her expertise. That's all she does. She's in the construction lending department. So that's definitely a niche that she's carved out. And her niche is she goes to people like me or high producing loan officers that don't want to do them. And she'll guarantee us, she won't try to get the permanent financing on it. So the idea is that let me do the construction financing and then I'll turn them back to you to do the permanent financing on them. So for me, so that's a product niche that makes sense for me. I don't think like specializing in an FHA loans when everyone else can do that is necessarily the way to go. I think in terms of specialization, I think the key is to be really clear about what the value is that you're adding to the bottom line of the people who you're expecting to refer you business, and knowing what's important for them and where your strengths lie need to overlap into what's important for referring partners. And if something that is super important for the referring partners is not something that you specialize in or not something that is your strength, then knowing when to pass on that relationship because it's always going to be full of friction. So if somebody's really, really cares about having access to you at 8:30 at night, because that's when they meet a lot of their clients, because they do house calls and they do all their work on the weekends at Saturday at 5 p.m. and that's not something that you're willing to be available for, I don't think that's the right partner for you. And coming from a place of abundance, you can realize that there's literally millions of other partners out there potentially for you.
I mean, saying no is an incredibly powerful thing. And, you've all heard every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. But even more so from a mindset standpoint is if you commit to doing something and then you have to say no later, it knocks you down. It takes a piece of you that you need to go rebuild later. And so I've just gotten really good at saying no. I mean, I used to volunteer for everything. Somebody, you need this for a charity, you need that for a charity, you need anything for an event, man, I'll be there. I'm your guy. And it got very taxing. And it was hard at first when I just said, sorry, can't do it. I can't do it. Yeah. And I kind of felt bad because I was always that person. Now, though, when I say that I'm going to do something and somebody knows that they got 110% of me and that they can count on it, and it makes me feel better. There was also a time, I mean, my kids are 2 and 4 right now, almost 3 and 5. Yeah. I love my family. I love my wife. It's one of my favorite things to ask coaching clients. And like, we're working 70 hours a week. I'm like, do you like your family? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, some people just like to stay at work because you hate your family and you want to stay away. And it helps me know who you are more to give you better advice on how to craft that. And I want to be around them as much as possible. I go into work a little bit later every day so I can take my kid to school at 8:30 because that 5 minutes of drive time that we have is just amazing, priceless time that at some point in my life, I'm going to be like, man, I'm going to miss out on that. Or I would have missed out on that. And I'm never going to go back and be like, I wish I would have done that. I leave early a couple days a week to take them to soccer or do other things at 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And I work my schedule around that. And I've had to say no to other things to make sure that I don't have regrets later in my life.
Yeah. And listen, that's your truth, right? And I think that there's no judgment for somebody who is maybe realizes that they enjoy the grind, right? I mean, I think that it's okay. You have to know yourself. Do you listen to Gary Vaynerchuk at all?
Occasionally, yeah.
Okay. So like, he talks about this a lot of like the self-awareness of like, he's like, I wish that I was the guy that was in 6 softball leagues and fantasy football leagues and was at home at 5 o'clock with that. He's like, I could do that. I've got plenty of money. Like I've got a team that can do this, but I just know that I would be at home and I would be missing the grind. And so he works, he just structured his life in a way that he works crazy hours and crazy hard during the week. And then he'll take 3 weeks off at a time and just completely 100% unplug. And he knows what works for him. And I think that just having that self-awareness around trying to conform yourself to everyone else's politically correct standard of like work-life balance is a recipe for resentment. I'm pretty transparent on this. I blew through my first marriage, and the byproduct of it was I built a huge business because I didn't want to be home. I didn't have kids. It's a little bit easier, but like I literally worked 60, 70 hours a week because I didn't want to go home. So, I don't know chicken and the egg in terms of that analogy. Like, I don't know which caused which. And now I don't work. I work half of that amount because I actually enjoy being at home. So I've restructured my business in a way that I've got enough team and staff that can handle that. And I say no to realtors who want me to work open houses on the weekend, or I have somebody that can do that for me, and that kind of stuff where I'm not working 90 hours a week. But I think that if you're audacious enough to want to have a $150 million business, then I think maybe making some sacrifices or delaying some gratification, and you have to make that determination for what is important to you. And if you're going to feel even worse about feeling like you're leaving a bunch of opportunity on the table, not just money, but like opportunity for success and feeding your ego and these things that are maybe not politically correct, but that are actually important. A lot of us get into this business because we're competitive. I'm super competitive. You have to figure out where that balance is for you. And everyone's at a different point. I mean, I honestly, I really wish sometimes that I would be happy making $110,000 a year on a salary, living a very simple life without a lot of responsibility, and was working 25 hours a week. I wish that would make me happy, but I know that it wouldn't. Not just the money piece, but I just know that I would feel lazy, or I'd feel like I've got a lot more to give and I'm not giving it. So getting to that point of self-awareness around like how work-life balance is important to you, and aligning that and not caring what other people think about it. Obviously, like involving your family and involving whoever is the 3 or 4 or 5 most important people to you. But creating your practice in a way that solves for all of those is, I think, super important.
I mean, I put in a decade of working those hours. So, I started the business like we're talking about in 2002. I turned 40 this year. And so we chose to have kids a little bit later in life. I've been knowing my wife for 14 years. We've been married for 10 of those years. And that was the decision. That's what worked for us. So you got to put in the time, man. Anybody who tells you can just go hire a bunch of people, you don't need to work, I mean, that is a bunch of BS. You got time.
There's nobody that's been super successful. There's nobody that's been super successful that didn't work their face off.
Yeah.
Nobody. I've literally met nobody that is like, now you can get to a point where you can start really enjoying some of the fruits of that. And I think we're both basically the same age, similar stages in life. And now we can start to reap some of the really hard work that we put in. But like, if you're listening to this and you're 28 years old and you're single, or you've got a girlfriend, or you've married with no kids, like you've got to work your face off. Like there's no such thing as work-life balance if you're audacious enough to want to build a business that is at a certain level. That level is different for everybody, and knowing what that is for you is super important. And listen, if you're 28, you might not know that yet. It might not be until you're 33 or 34 until you sort of figure out like, no, I'm fine making X and working Y. But don't do it because people say that you have to have work-life balance, or don't do it because people say you have to make $1 million a year, because you've got Instagram envy. Like, do it because what's important to you. And that all is mindset, because that stuff will F you up. If you're chasing the Joneses, you're chasing all these other things because you think that's what I should be at this stage in my life. Oh, my friend is a year younger than me and he's already C-level at Google. Like that stuff will just mess you up, man. Like figure out what is important for you and what you want out of your life and structure your business around that. It's so hard to do. I struggle with this all the time still. Like I don't want to come off as some expert in this, but I do have some self-awareness that is an important balance to try to capture.
Yeah, no, that is sage and great advice, Andrew. Like the thing that successful people do is they don't worry about how other people live their lives, and they live their own lives how they need to live their lives. Think of the number of people that we all know who, you got this envy for, like just like you were saying, Andrew, and then you find out 6 months later, man, they just got a divorce. And they just lost their job. Man, something bad happened. Yeah. And then we usually go back on Facebook and like, oh yeah, well, I haven't seen them. There wasn't any pictures with their wife for the last 4 months. Okay, that makes sense now. And so like, just live your own life. And whatever you're happy doing, do that. Yeah. It doesn't matter what anybody else says you should do, or just live what you want to live.
Yeah. Super important. So let's talk about realtors. I know the default is, hey, we're in a purchase market, so we need to go find realtors who are going to send us business. And that's the core of any good business. And I do think that has been true and has held true over time for a long time. And I'm hesitant to ever say the words, we're in a new paradigm, because I always feel like that's what everybody said back in before the .com. That's what everybody said in subprime. That's what everybody, like, I feel like everybody thinks that this is a new market and that rules from 50 years in the past don't apply. Think that it 100% doesn't apply. That being said, I do think that there is a ginormous shift toward people gathering data. And by data, I mean doing a lot of research prior to contacting an agent, including financing options prior to contacting an agent. I think that's a shift that has been happening for the last 4 or 5 years. And demographically, with millennials, I feel like they are much more data driven before they contact somebody, rather than like just contacting somebody and letting them tell them everything, to where I think over the next 5-10 years is going to be a real shift towards people finding financing prior to finding their real estate agent, which means going after real estate agents might be chasing the wrong end of the funnel. What are your thoughts on that? Feel free to disagree. I love arguments.
I mean, I see that is something that is going to continue to happen, especially as the age of the age of the average loan officer is a fair amount older than our 40-year-old selves. And the age of average realtor is 50 some odd years old. No. So there aren't as many getting into the market. So
let me just interrupt you there. The age of the average realtor who's actually doing business is lower than that, though. If you do a weighted average of number of transactions, I think it actually probably is in the low 40s.
Okay, cool.
This is all total intuition for me, just seeing stuff out there. I think that if you look at like licensed realtors, there's a whole lot of people who just keep their license active because of stuff. So I think that is a little bit overblown. Same thing with loan officers. I think it's a little bit overblown in some ways, but your point remains that there's not a whole lot of new blood coming into the industry.
And that makes sense. Both in the real estate and mortgage world, it's a career that you just find hard to leave.
Yeah. I've been trying for 10 years.
So, one of the things that we do is we're in front of a lot of financial planners, insurance agents, state attorneys, and it's also like part of just what we do in our follow-up process. It's part of our sell to our realtors. We have a system that we have in place. I teach my guys, we teach it next level of exactly how to be in front of your clients all the time. That database that we all have is a diamond mine.
Yeah.
We need to know how to continually mine that. And the cool thing is, we don't take a diamond out of there and it's done. We just keep putting diamonds in there and we get to keep being in front of them and they continue to turn out business for us all the time.
What does that look like practically? So this is like a page 5 of the 1003 type of...
No, so this is all follow-up after close. One of the things that we do to stay in front of them on a yearly basis.
Annual client review.
Yeah. So it's an annual review based upon the month that they've closed on. And there's a few other calls that we have that people that make phone calls to our database every single year, several times a year. It's not something that anybody hasn't heard before. But man, the funny thing is when you do it, like the number of people that I've talked to who said, wow, I did that once and it really worked. And it's like, well, did you do it again?
No, I already tried calling him. I left a message.
Can't help you. So realtors still give us so much business that I would not stop getting business. But we have a lot of referrals on a bunch of different sites on those interwebs out there. Mm-hmm. And so we get a fair amount of contacts from that. I mean, we get people every week who reach out from Zillow because of the reviews that we have on Zillow and say, hey, I want to talk with you.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to get all of those things developed. And so when you're looking at your business, there's buckets. So I got my realtor bucket. That may be your biggest bucket right now. Then, you've got your online reviews, you've got your database. Where are the other buckets that, you're feeding and getting business out of? And then understanding, being able to track that. What CRM are you using? And for those of you who are not, It doesn't matter. Any CRM is better than the one that you're not using.
The best CRM is the one you use.
Yeah. So get something where you're tracking where that business is coming from. And then, just paying attention, like plugging into someone, whether or not you hire a coach, man, get with other people in the mortgage business. Don't stay in your little box. Find out what others are doing. If you see like all of the most successful people in the world, they have a coach and they are networking with people who are doing better than them at the same level. Like if you're the smartest guy in the room all the time, it may make you feel good, but you're stupid. So sorry.
I struggle with that a lot. Just kidding. Being the smartest. No, it's literally, I don't do this podcast because I make any money off of it. In fact, I probably lose a little bit off of it. But I do this podcast because I get to have conversations with people like you and actually learn a lot of stuff. So it's an excuse for me to just have interesting conversations. It's not to compare myself to Joe Rogan, who's got the biggest podcast in the world. But the whole reason he started his podcast is because he wanted to have interesting conversations with people that if he didn't have this platform, he wouldn't be able to go get Neil Tyson to go have a 3-hour conversation with him. But now that he has this platform, he's able to do it. It's the same reason why I do this, is because I'm constantly intrigued about how 2, 3, 4, 10, 100 different successful, you take that Scotsman's Guide list of top 200 people, and we all do it 200 different ways. And if you survey me on year 1, year 5, year 10, it's 5 different ways in between that. I mean, my business model is constantly evolving, which I think can be pros and cons. Sometimes, maybe I'm leaving some on the table by not like focusing on a very specific business plan and going deep on that. But I just think that like there's so many different ways that you can do this business to structure in a way that works best for you and works to your strengths and solves for what you like doing, what makes you money, and what you're good at. That's really where I think having that self-awareness around how you actually want to build your business is super important. And then going after the sources and the funnels of business that will accomplish that. I mean, I had a guy on from Seattle, Michael Shane from Sammamish Mortgage, who built this whole business on blogging, like 100% on blogging, consumer direct. So he's like, I just didn't like dealing with real estate agents and didn't want to rely on them for business. So people find me, and he does 180 million a year, and he's just crushing. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can do that.
Andrew, you mentioned 2 types of people that I hear, loan officers, I hear everyone complain about all the time. Loan officers specifically. I hate realtors. I hate millennials. Man, like, dude, get over it. Like, we got to deal with them. First of all, if you hate realtors, look within. There's something that you're doing wrong, and you're probably just not working with the right ones. There's a ton of really cool realtors out there, and you know what? A bunch of them hate loan officers because
it's like saying I hate people. I mean, they're just people. I mean, like, you just got to find the right ones.
You got to find the ones that you connect with. And with millennials, figure out where they are, meet them where they're at. They don't want to call from you every day. But man, if you hit them up on Facebook, if you text message them, if you meet them where they are, they'll respond to you. They're into it. And the other cool thing about millennials, like, they, as we sit here, are not like, everybody wants a good deal, but man, they're not like incredibly price sensitive. If you are good at your job, you communicate with them how they want to be communicated with, and you provide a good service for them, man, they're pretty dang loyal when it comes down to it. And so like, that is just a huge market that is only getting bigger. They experience so much of that 08, 09 downturn. So their generation is buying houses a little bit later, but now they see it, and now they're entering the market. So figure out, they identify with things, they identify with causes, they identify with people who really want to help them. So figure out a way to help them, and they're real people just like us.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I really think that for the people who throw a giant blanket over a whole demographic of, either, employer, what somebody does for a living, like realtors, or a generation, you're really just not finding the right people. I mean, because at the end of the day, there's whatever the number is, 1.8 million active real estate agents in the US. So to say that you hate all of them, like, it's a little bit dogmatic. So, hey, I know we're running up here against our hour, so I want to give you an opportunity to let my audience know, where can people find out about Next Level Coaching? Where can people connect with you if they wanted to, if they had any questions about experiencing what it is that you provide?
Yeah, so if you want to check us out online, you can Google Next Level Loan Officers, go to nextlevello.com and check us out there. Always feel free to call my office, 314-361-9979. We can get a time booked and just find out what you need, provide some value for you. If there's a fit to look at something further, I'm happy to look and discuss that with you as well too. But man, just as we are trying to do for you all who've listened with us for the past hour, and the number one thing I can tell you is just go create value. Find people who you can plug into who are at your level and smarter than you. I mean, it is as true as the day is long that you are the sum of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And I'm fortunate enough with my next level, the fellow owners in it, I spend more time with them than anyone, and they're awesome people. So that adds a huge benefit for me, but find out what your value is and just go create value. Dollars will follow. Yeah. And you're hungry for the money, people can smell it. You just try to create value, and they look at you like, well, what's he in for? Well, I mean, we still ask for business, but I'm going to create a whole bunch of value for somebody before I ask them for their business.
Yeah, it's awesome. Sean, this has been great. I appreciate you joining us and sharing your expertise. We'd love to have you on again at some point.
Awesome. That'd be great.
The information contained in this podcast presentation is for business and professional use only to assist real estate professionals and is not an advertisement to extend consumer credit as defined by Section 226.2 of Regulation Z. Arklatex Financial Services, LLC, NMLS number 22142 DBA Benchmark Mortgage makes no representations or warranties of any kind, expressed or implied, about the completeness, reliability, suitability, or availability with respect to the information, products, or services. All loans subject to borrower qualifying. Other restrictions may apply. Branch Manager Andrew Sauce, NMLS number 259002. Branch located at 140 Newport Center Drive, Suite 210, Newport Beach, California 92660. Contact the branch by calling 949-258-9555. Equal housing opportunity.